one of the classical questions that is asked regarding the period of time that you're approaching, even the Rosh Hashana and Kippur, also in Yeshiva. One of the more famous questions is the relationship between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. But if, as we define Rosh Hashanah, is the day of judgment, the Yom Hadin, it would seem that it should follow Yom Kippur. But first, one should achieve atonement, live through whatever sanctifying, purifying Tara Yom Kippur, and then approach the din of Rosh Hashanah. The judgment will follow the process of Kippur. In fact, of course, that's not what we see. We see it's the converse, that Rosh Hashanah precedes. In the prayer Tefillah of Rosh Hashanah itself, seem to see two themes that jump out very quickly that would also seem to need some kind of a reconciliation. The Tefillah starts with the V'chein tein pavdecha Hashem Elokeinu al kol ma'asecha. The Tefillah is a Tefillah which seems to be addressing itself to the world community. The concern of the Jew for humanity. V'chein tein pavdecha, give your fear, pachad of you, al kol ma'asecha, on all of your doing, all of your creation. Your fear on everything that you have created. Mephoshim already did differentiate between the different kinds of fear, pachad and amor. Pachad is usually associated with fear of someone who's in close to geographic proximity. Amor, a little bit more distant, the less intense fear. But in any event, the theme that is at work here is the Jew praying to the Rebbeinu Shalom for bringing the world around to a recognition of the Rebbeinu Shalom. Yira'ucha kol ha'ma'asim, all of creation. Again, v'yishtachu lefanach kol ha'bruim, v'yeyosu kulam aguda echos. And they will all become a single unit. What is it that the Jew, as an individual or as a people, is going to effect on Rosh Hashanah that's going to achieve this bringing together of the entire human community, one single body. Immediately afterwards, we ask specifically for the Jews of people. We've moved away from the general, from the universal. Now we're focusing on the Jews as a people. To your people, seems to be very ethnically oriented, very specifically now introverted back to the Jewish people. No longer the extroverted statement was concerned about the entire world. the Jews. The next paragraph, even more specific, tzadikim yilu v'yismochu. Reference to a particular elite within the Torah community, within the Jewish community, tzadikim, righteous men. Follow the next paragraph again, coming back with Simlo, Ato Hashem levadecha kol ma'asecha. Again, the final unraveling, the denouement of history when the Rebbeinu Shalom alone will be melech and be recognized. What is the relationship between the Yom Tovim, the plow, and the Rosh Hashana? It's the Shlosh Regolim. We've talked about it in the past, about the sensitivity that Yahdus has to the condensation of maximum exposure to the Shekhinah, to limited times and limited places. Both spatially and temporally, the Torah has restricted and constrained this maximum exposure so that we can tolerate it, digest it, and live with it in the workaday week of our lives. That's why there's a Beis Mikdash. The Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't need to be the tenant in a particular domicile. But we must limit the experience. So it's limited to a Beis Mikdash where we have that maximum exposure. We limit it in time, Shlosh Golem, Yom Nevoyim, that we have times that are fixed for this exposure. Even within those times, there are different stratification of the Yisrael, the Lev, the Kohen Gadol. He goes b'fnei, only at a certain point in this whole process. There's a reduction, which actually we've spoken about in connection with Maimon Har Sinai, when the Ummah, the Am Yisrael, opted out of the direct contact with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Moshe had to act as an agency after the first two of the Aseret HaDinos. And as the Meforshim tend to explain it, that the greater the exposure, the greater the responsibility, and that was intolerable, that degree of exposure, so they prefer that Moshe be the medium for the conduit for that maximum exposure, thus reducing the plateau, the degree of their responsibility. The beginning, at the outset, Chumash Bereshis were told that initially the world was to have been created with Midas Hadin, with this trait of law and justice that would not quite be tempered by mercy. Yet, in what seems to be an anthropomorphic rendition of the sequence, the Rebbeinu Shalom, as it were, Kaviyochel, thought better and introduced Rachamim, mercy, otherwise man couldn't have made it. Not quite acceptable to leave it simply as a changing of the mind of the Kodesh Baruch Hu. And so it has been suggested that what is more probable that is meant is that this idea of din, of judgment, pre-mercy, is the ideal that remains even after Rachamim has been introduced. And that this ideal remains the guide for how man should be able to function. The probability is that we cannot make it without Rachamim. But theoretically, we should know that this would be the ideal. And that the universe, having been created with din, remains not a functional norm, but an ideal norm, the way things should be. This format, this pattern of the way things should be, governs the relationship between Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur as well. The way things should be is that man should make it on din. Should be able to approach Rosh Hashanah with din before the experience of Rachamim. The reality is that it's not going to happen like that. But the ideal would be that it should be possible. But there's another facet to it. It's that in order to deal with the Kippur of Yom Kippur, one has to be able to deal with the Rebbeinu Shalom with integrity. I can't ask Rachamim from the Rebbeinu Shalom unless I'm addressing the Rebbeinu Shalom. In order to approach the Rebbeinu Shalom, I must first live through the experience of Rosh Hashanah to be Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were. Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't need my coronating of the divinity. It's a contradiction in terms. But for me to go through the experience of the coronation, of being Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is something that I need to establish what we've tried to describe in the past as this honest relationship, this proper proportion, the true ratio between myself and the Rebbeinu Shalom. What it means to be a mortal creature that has been created by a Boyevin, by a creator. And that without the experience of Rosh Hashanah, I can't, in all honesty, approach and beseech HaKadosh Baruch Hu as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and as that Nivra, that creature was dependent on his Boyevin. Am Yisrael as a nation has been commissioned with the function of bringing this din in its workability, its justice, and its truth, demonstrated to the universal community. The difference, our hashpah, our influence on the world, is through establishing an ideal community in Eretz Yisrael. That's why Yahadus is land linked. That's why Torah is a religion, as we've said before, that the religion and the nationalism are synonymous. So that every facet of human behavior and the human community will be included within the experience of the religion. There isn't this schizophrenia of the civil and the religious. The totality of human experience is available for becoming sanctified and to be guided and directed in the service of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Jews' effect upon the world is indirectly through the achieving of that excellence in this community in Eretz Yisrael. And through this perfection, we will in turn influence the world. V'havli glulim min ha'otz, v'takun olam b'malchus shakai. That's the tikkun olam is what we're after. We say it every day. It's called birth that every need should eventually bow in recognition of the Rosh. Question is how to achieve that. If I have right now a limited amount of energy and creativity, what's the most effective way, what's the most efficient scheme of having that impact on the world community? Do I go directly to the universal community and try and get across the deeper truth of a Rebbeinu Shalom? Do I try and get across a deeper truth, as the Rebbeinu Yenes says, that when we say Mahoya Kulam Laguda Echos, that they should all be one single unit, he explains that the divisiveness that we see in the world is a direct function of man's material needs, because material needs come into conflict one with the other. We tend to collide in our pursuit of satisfying of our material needs, because invariably my want is somehow limited by your wants, the whole orchestration of our needs. What allows for unifying people, bringing people together, a good ethos, they're coming together as a single unit, is ruchnius, spirituality. That which can connect people is the themes of spiritual truths that where people complement each other. That your spora in the tasteless on the daf is something that will add to my information, to my knowledge, in getting the total picture of the truth of Torah. That your understanding of a machshava, of an idea, is another brick in the wall, in the building, in the city that I have to build. We complement each other. Our selfish needs are what create hafroda, what create divisiveness between people. So how are we going to achieve the breaking through to try and get this sense of a family of nations, of a world community that should not be in conflict, that should not be in a recurring pattern of war after war? Do we go directly to the world? Or, Chazal have told us no. That's an inefficient way of doing it, won't work. There are two ways, when the dike bursts, there are two ways to deal with it. Put your finger in to hold the dam from pouring through, but obviously that's a temporary solution. The solution is to reconstruct the dike. It's a longer range solution. It's a short range solution. There's the tvach arok, how we're going to deal with it. Proceeding from our axiology, the only mending of the breaches in the dike that violence, hate, disunity keeps pouring through, the only mending of that will be through bringing the world community to a recognition that there is that there's one Rebbeinu Shalom. This Rebbeinu Shalom is Machayev, the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 mitzvahs of the Noahide code, Chayam mitzvahs to this Jewish community. Without that single absolute objective reality as being the governing axioms that run through it all, any other alternative is going to break down in conflicting needs, in the collision of different urgencies of selfishness. The only possibility of a Aguda Echos is in the Jews as a nation fulfilling themselves. If what we're truly after is the same thing, Pavod of Hashem Elokeinu, that Pachad should be our Kol Ma'asecha. If we want all of creation to come to that recognition, the only way that that's going to come about is through the medium of through the medium of the Jewish people as a nation. If the Jews do not achieve that fulfillment of their genius as a unique society, if the Jews don't achieve quote Hashem la'amecha tehila l'reyecha v'sikva teva l'dershecha v'pisram pelam yachal lo simcha li'artzecha to your land, Rebbeinu Shalom, v'sosan li'yecha to your city, to Yerushalayim, then by definition we can't achieve the ultimate goal, which is the fulfillment of the world community. The methodology of achieving that world of Aguda Echos, where it won't be fragmented into different conflicting sections, is only through Simcha li'artzecha, the joy that will come to Eretz Yisrael in the moment of the recognition that Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael, that this land has a unique purpose and role and function as the place that has to house the fulfillment of the Rebbeinu Shalom's Ummah, of a Mamlechus Kohanim, a nation of priests that have to fulfill another level of spirituality and intensity of truth that will burn and warm and light the entire world. And that, see, we've started with the description of what the Megamah, the goal is. Tachlis. The Tachlis is the world. The methodology, the medium of achieving that, the same Kovod Hashem li'amecha. But how do we get amecha? Even that has another inner core. We're dealing here with concentric circles. The greater circle, the larger circle, is Kol HaBruim, the entire creation, all of men. The inner circle, same thing, Kovod Hashem le'amecha, to your nation, the Artzecha. And yet there's one circle within that circle. There's another circle, a yet smaller circle. And this inner core circle is the concentration. Here is where the activity, the electrons, the protons that are at work in this nucleus at the center core of these inner circles, uvachein tzadikim, yiru v'yismochu v'yishor v'yaloisim. Of course, the simple reading is that this will be the ultimate confirmation, reading it ascendingly. When the world recognizes, then it's the confirmation for Am Yisrael, and then it's the reconfirmation for the tzaddikim. But it can be read this way as well, is that the goal is this world community. The medium for achieving this is the same thing called le'amecha, to your nation. Le'amecha, how will that come about? U'v'chein tzaddikim, through the medium of the tzaddikim that are at the center core. Proportionally, in Klal Yisrael today, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but it would seem to be a rather small number of B'nai Torah, people that are committed to Shmiras Mitzvahs today, first sleepers. What percentage of whole billion of Klal Yisrael are on their way to daven? What percentage of those that are on their way to daven are on their way to daven? The minion that's a al pi halacha, with a seder tefillah that's al pi halacha. How many will be standing on Rosh Hashana? In a sense, maybe that's alluded to in what David HaMelech says when he asked the Rebbeinu Shalom to be painter to turn the tefillas ha'aro to the prayer. Aro is that lone tree that grows in the wilderness of the Midbar. It's a tree that has been identified and becomes symbolic in the language of Tanakh, in the understanding of Chazal, as somebody who must be independent, an individual, unique. David HaMelech continues the posuk, and he asked not to be mavazed though, not to embarrass as tfilos song, Loshen Rabin. The Netziv and others draw attention to the switch from the Loshen Yochid to the Loshen Rabin. And perhaps that is what we can focus on. That this comments, this number of B'nai Torah becoming more. This Tefillah Ta'ara, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, there wasn't this flow of people coming back to the halachic community. We hadn't seen the late Bonav Alavesam as each day is mounting. And still, even yet now, it's still a Sa'aro, that tree that's an individual, that's independent. But perhaps through the clear, when we talk to Leviation, we ask the Leviation to be painted to turn a listening ear. In our terminology, that we always humanize, anthropomorphize our relationship to Leviation in order to break it into terms that we can render experiential. We ask the Leviation, listen to the tefillah of this kametz of B'nai Torah, this halachic community, however small it is, and in the growth of this community, don't be mavazed, don't embarrass as tefillah, the larger tefillah, in number and campus of Klal Yisrael, who haven't yet found their way back. Through the energy of this inner circle of tzaddikim in process, this tefillah, this core circle that will spin off the wider circle that will in turn spin off the even wider circle. This is the initiation, this is the beginning of this mounting energy that will climax with the tefillah of Yom Kippur. This klichas now. This klichas, obviously, even when Chazal say that the Rebbeinu Shalom is misave, has a loss for the tefillah and the prayer of tzaddikim. That's again our terminology for describing the achievement for man, the creativity that is involved in tefillah. From the moment when man succeeds in focusing and directing his energy on the source of all creation, of clarifying his relationship to the Rebbeinu Shalom, on whom he is dependent, on whom history is dependent, on whom the fulfillment of the world is dependent. Right now, when we begin this slichas, it's the moment to achieve that kind of participation of our personal energy in this greater energy of the tzaddikim, Klal Yisrael, and the world. Strangely enough, that our tefillahs can make a difference. Because in the act of our tefillah, we become somebody else. And by becoming somebody else, we shift the balance. We shift the balance from one circle to the next and re-energize the entire world.